Let's get to this basketball team. You've extolled the virtues of this basketball team. I've kind of been like, I'm not sure. I've begun to get won over, and they could soon be the number one team in the nation. Why and how? I know a lot happened on Wednesday night.
When the rankings come out Monday, Tennessee will be number one in the AP poll, number one in the coaches poll, and number one in the net rankings, which is used in the NCAA tournament. And Dave still thinks they're not as good of a team as last year. He just thinks
that, I can admit when I'm wrong. I'm backing off. Come on.
So Tennessee entered this week number 3. And then Wednesday happened. And what happened on Wednesday? Auburn lost to Duke. And Duke's not going to bump Tennessee because they already have 2 losses. But Duke beat Auburn, so they're already saying Coach K who? I'm kidding. They're not saying that at Duke. And Kansas got upset by Creighton, losing by 13 points. Tennessee doesn't play again until Tuesday when they face Miami at Madison Square Garden, the Jimmy V Classic. So by default, Tennessee at number 3 is going to move up to number 1. And they're going to tip off in the Jimmy V Classic at the Garden on national TV Tuesday night on ESPN, the number 1 team in the nation.
It's pretty phenomenal. Our poll question is going to get changed up, and it is now, I'd rather Vols win Natty and Hoops or football in the championship game. Also, to wrap up our last poll question, getting David Sanders was a must, 69%, Gravy 30%. So let's get back to basketball. With this basketball team, even though you were high on them from the get, are they better and or further along than you thought they would be?
They're further along than I thought they would be. Because I thought this team was going to depend on Darling Stone Dubar developing into an elite player as he picked up Rick Barnes' system. It hasn't mattered because Chaz Lanier is freaking balling. Because Chaz Lanier is literally matching Dalton Connect's production from last year right now.
Unbelievable.
And yeah, this dude is incredible. I've told you guys, he is a slightly less athletic Dalton Connect. He actually kind of reminds me of not Dalton Connect. Why did I say that? Ja Morant, slightly less athletic Ja Morant. He kind of reminds me of, and I'm going to say this, the college version of Steph Curry, who is not, as you know, Dave, was not the
those are 2 way different players than Ja Morant and Steph Curry.
Steph Curry was much more of a slasher in college than a shooter. Remember?
Yeah, he was still the teardrop guy. I agree, but I mean, he
didn't become a shooter.
You're giving me 2 very different.
I'm giving you 6'3" guards that can score from anywhere on the court, and that are the go-to scorers.
I don't know that Ja Morant's that great of a shooter that he could do that.
Well, he was, and then he stopped being. He was getting better, and then he decided once he got his contract to stop working on his shooting, and he decided to work on his shooting in another way, if you know what I'm talking about. But, I would say one of the reasons I'm high on Chaz Lanier is his work ethic to a degree, and this is where I get the Steph Curry. That's why I go more Steph Curry now than Ja Morant. Is whatever you want to say about Steph Curry, the work ethic to develop that shot. He had to be in the gym 12 hours a day, didn't he?
Oh, no question.
Yeah. And I think I've heard that Chaz Lanier has the same level of work ethic. And guys, this dude is an NBA star. He's an NBA star waiting to happen. And it's the second time in a row Rick Barnes found a kid at the lower level who wants to fine-tune his game by playing for Rick Barnes so he can have a chance at the NBA. And by fine-tuning his game, combined with the growth spurt he had last year, we're looking at we may be looking at the best player in college basketball. I'm going to go ahead and say that. We may be looking at the best player in college basketball. Chaz Lanier is incredible.
Wow. Pretty strong praise. Who has been the second most impressive player? If Lanier's number 1, because we talked about how as an aggregate, maybe this team could be better, but it sounds like you think Chaz Lanier is just going to be better than Dalton Connect, which would make them a better basketball team almost subsequently. But your thoughts on Tennessee's second, third best basketball player? I mean, what do you think of the biggest roster or the rest of the roster?
So I'm very impressed by Igor Milicic Jr. And I'm not just impressed by his scoring, Dave. We expected him to be kind of the finesse stretch forward that could stretch the court. I think that what impresses me though is he can play physical under the basket. He's averaging 7 rebounds a game. And so if Barnes wants to use Milicic for a size advantage, he can say, hey, Igor, get under the basket with Felix Opera, and you two both just dominate the boards, and they'll do it. And that really stands out to me. So he's the second most. Zakai Ziegler has actually been a bit of a drop off this year, but it doesn't matter as much because he does so many. Zakai Ziegler is that guy. I mean, Dave, we know him. We all know this guy. You see it on football teams a lot. He's going to make 17 mistakes in a game, but you still love him because he plays so hard.
Yeah, true. My question for Igor, is he going to step out even more, or is his role going to be defined as underneath the basket? How versatile can he be? I'd like to see him straight down the middle, 50% on the post, 50% willing to step out and shoot that three. I think it makes Tennessee incredibly tough to defend. Now, you do have to give me this. I was very high on Igor headed into this season. As a matter of fact, higher than Darling Stone or Chaz. So I think his game is the one that, from what we've seen to this point, has the most room and potential to grow. You've already seen enough of Chaz Lanier where you think he's like an All-American top, right?
At least the last 3 games. I wasn't saying that about Chaz Lanier at the start of the season, but what I've seen from him in the last 3 games.
Okay, so Dubar, we don't know much about because he hadn't played that much. But with Igor, I've seen enough of him where I think he's good now. He could be very good or like incredible.
Yes. I think the way they're going to use Igor is based on who they're playing at the time. He's a matchup problem for either team because, Dave, when you get to the NCAA tournament and what's been Rick Barnes' Achilles heel, he always lost to lower seeds from mid-majors in the NCAA tournament, right? And what he can do this year, though, is when he runs into one of those teams, they typically run 4 guards when their power forward is 6'5". He's going to say, Igor, go get under the basket. Go get under the basket and just use your size and outmuscle them. But then when they go and play Kentucky, who's very athletic this year, when they play Auburn, who's very athletic, Rick Barnes is going to slow down the offense and have Igor play at the stretch 4 spot and make Auburn defend the entire perimeter.
Yep.
And that's going to be more difficult. So I think look, they're very versatile. I said this team would be as good as last year. I'm leaning maybe, if I had to gamble on a national title team right now, I would put my money on Tennessee. If I had to bet on a team to win the national title in college basketball right now, my money would be on Tennessee.
Pull up those odds while I share the poll question, which is pretty good, brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations, your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat Mortgage, chat with 2 T's, mortgage.com. Our poll question, whoa! Sometimes I get genuinely surprised. I know you want more success out of football, which makes sense because it's 90% of the budget. And it's what you show up 100,000 people. I mean, they couldn't get 100,000 for a basketball game, even if they had the room. And then, so I'd rather Vols win Natty and hoops, football be in the national championship game. 69% say they'd rather football be in the national championship game. 33% say win a national championship in hoops. Which would Caleb give the Vols more national exposure? Because ultimately what you want is exposure to help you build a program, to help you recruit, to help your NIL guys get more money. What do you think would be bigger from an exposure standpoint?
Football in the championship game. I'd rather football win 1 game in the playoff than anything else happen ever. I mean, if I'm a fan of Tennessee, if I'm a fan of any college at this level, I'd rather football win 1 game. I'd rather football make the college football playoff. Put it this way. I'd rather the football team make the college football playoff and the basketball team lose every single game on its schedule. Go 0 and whatever. Philip Fulmer once said football's the engine that drives the train. And he was right, because he's trying to say football's the heart. But he undersold how important football is. I think football's the battery in an electric car, Dave. If you have an electric car, football's the battery, which is literally the whole car, basically.
Right. Which means
football's the battery.
Which means it can explode on the freeway, which it did back in 2009, yes. Right?
Football is the battery in an electric car. Basketball is what? I don't know, like the tires, maybe?